Welcome back to another episode on the Metal Verbalizers podcast. This podcast is for you that want to discover new fantastic metal. We feel that there aren't enough podcasts that support the underground scene. That is why the whole purpose of this podcast is to find new and or smaller bands and tell you about them. In this episode, we are going to talk about a band that has a quite melodic style of heavy metal. I got hooked on their music straight away, and I believe that you will as well. If you want to learn more about the why, when, how, and much more, join me in this episode. This is Throne of Iron. Alright, so we're gonna welcome Tucker and Throne of Iron to Metal Verbalizers podcast. Welcome. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm wonderful.
Yeah,
It's
awesome.
it's very humid and stormy here. We're in the beginning of tornado season here in Indiana.
All right. Yeah, we actually had the first day over here in Sweden where it's actually pretty much summer heat, which is awesome. I'm so happy about it. It was like 20 degrees Celsius.
Mhm.
So it has been a really nice day, actually. But do you have anything that you want to say before we get going with all of the questions and the actual interview and such?
I'm ready to get into this. I'm very
Yeah,
excited.
awesome. I usually like to go more personalized before we get into the band. So what I usually like to ask is, why did you become a musician and why did you want to start playing music? Is it from like a parent that's been a musician, or is it just by yourself that you have found music?
My dad was a drummer in a few different country bands when I was a
Yeah.
kid, but he wasn't like touring or anything like that. It was mostly just in the local bar circuit. That definitely made an impression on me, but I didn't really start caring about music or playing music until I got into heavy metal when I was 12 or 13.
Yeah.
Um, and I think Black Sabbath is probably the reason why I decided that I wanted to play guitar because I wanted to I wanted to crush things with sound like Tony Iommi.
Yeah. Well, Tone Iommi is just an amazing guitarist, and I don't know how he does it with those like finger thingies that he has.
Yeah.
I'm a guitarist
Well,
myself, so
in the 70s, I think he was relying on cocaine powers a little bit there, but he made it work.
possibly, who could have guessed?
Yeah.
But yeah, if we were going to get into the band a little bit, Throne of Iron, when was the band started?
The band started originally as a solo thing. I had some music that I wanted to make and bring into the world, which is kind of how it tends to go for me.
Yeah.
I just feel like I have this compulsive need to create sometimes, and I was helping Corwin, who's now the other guitar player in Throne of Iron. I was helping him move one day, and I drank a few too many beers, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go home, man. I'm gonna make some music. And on my way home, I already had riffs in my head, so I
Yeah.
sat down at my computer desk and I wrote all the music for the 2018 demo in I don't know, I think about 4 hours, something like that.
Well, that's
And then I did all the
impressive.
vocals. I did all the vocals the next morning when I was hungover, and then I spent a little time mixing it and making it sound okay. And then the next morning before I went to work, I uploaded it to Bandcamp, and then 10 days later we had a record label contract in my inbox, and I had to put a band together.
That's crazy. What was the name like the same from the start, or was it
I've
like,
been
how did you
I've
guys
been
come up
sitting
with the
on
name?
I've been sitting on the name for a while. I was I'm a medium sized fan of uh, of Scandinavian history because, of course, I'm a boring guy from the Midwest in America,
Mhm.
so I have to be. Um, so I was reading about kenning in Norse poetic meter and the idea that you would have a nickname for something essentially to make it fit into a poetic meter. and I was bench pressing out in my garage, and I was like, oh, I bet Throne of Iron would be a kenning for a bench. And then
Yeah.
I just held on to that for like a year and a half. And then whenever I put this demo out, I was like, oh, that's a good enough name. And I just slapped it on there.
Yeah, well, it's awesome. I just love that is one of my favorite questions to ask because the answers are just so different, and you can never expect what the bands are going to answer.
It says a lot about the person that you're asking a lot too. The person who you're sourcing that question from, because you can kind of get a window into their life. A lot of the
Yeah.
times you'll get people be like, "Oh, well, this was in a name of 50 bands that we had written down in junior high English class or something like that," or "Oh, it's an inside joke or something."
Hmm.
There's so many
Yeah.
different possibilities there.
Yeah. And somehow when bands start, there's always beer involved. I don't know why.
Typically, yes. All the good ones.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, if we're going to go into the band's influences a little bit, what kind of influences are involved in creating the sound of the band?
I think that a lot of what would become Throne of Iron has kind of been burrowed into my brain since I
Yeah.
was a younger teenager. So it was a lot of the bands that I was listening to when I was first getting into heavy metal. So that would be Ozzy Osbourne solo stuff like Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
Black Sabbath, obviously. But the big ones that are most pertinent to the band would be Accept. Accept are a huge one.
Hmm.
Um, Manila Road, Wasp, um, Omen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's about the short list there.
Yeah.
If we got more granular, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna like trump up and like pretend that I listened to way cooler stuff than I did when I was a teenager. I because I did not. About the coolest thing I listened to when I was 14, 15 was probably Bathory.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you mentioned some of my favorites as well. Well, Ozzy Osbourne, of course, and
Mhm.
Accept uh, are absolute
Except
huge influences for me as well.
Accept are really big for both me and Corwin, the other guitar player.
Yeah.
He actually grew up listening to Accept because his dad was an Accept fan.
Yeah. I actually saw Accept in Barcelona back in 2015, but
That's awesome.
that was without Dirk Schneider, so that kind of sucked a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think his name is Mark, isn't it? The guy who replaced Udo.
I don't remember.
But so 2015, that probably would have been like they would have been probably touring on Stalingrad at that time, I think.
Probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was actually a good show. But then we saw Dirk Schneider live in Falun, up north in
Hmm.
Sweden. I say up north, but it's pretty much in the middle of Sweden. But yeah, and that was just great. Udo is just well, he's an
Does he still
entertainer.
have it?
He did back
Does he?
then.
Is this his voice still?
This was like 2017, possibly.
Okay. Yeah. But his voice still sounded like Udo.
Yeah,
All
you
right.
can never mistake that voice for anything else.
Right.
Pretty much.
It's so funny when you watch old Accept videos. Udo looks very, very, very short, but then you realize that he was just in a band with four giant men. Because like Wolf
Yeah,
Hoffman is very tall.
yeah.
But it turns out that like no, Udo wasn't like that short. It's just he was in a band with a bunch of giants.
I guess in that case, I would look like Frodo Baggins if I were standing in between them. But yeah, does the you were mentioning that Accept was another influence for the band. Does the for the other guys, does the influences vary a lot, or do you guys go for
Not
pretty
so
much the
much.
same thing?
In terms of this band, we're all pulling like we all understand the homework assignment that we've been
Yeah,
given to do this kind of music. We all like listen to much more than the traditional heavy metal realm. I mean, all three of us were in extreme metal bands of some kind or another before we
Right.
started this one. The drummer Jacob and I were in a kind of a stoner doom sludge band for. I mean, I was in that band for 13 years before we started Throne of Iron. So, and we have a very vast wellspring of material that we're pulling from. But when it's
Yeah.
time to do Throne of Iron, we kind of lock in and we do well with the limitations, I think. Well, there's definitely, especially on some of the songs on Adventure 2, there are some more extreme metal influences that have kind of seeped their way in, but I think that they just help provide a contrast to the rest of the material.
Yeah. Yeah, because that is something that when I listen to your music, that is something that I think is kind of cool because it feels like you guys bring in a little a little bit of that extreme metal stuff into Throne of Iron as well,
Mhm.
where we have passages with a little faster drums and more like extreme metal, almost thrashy guitar riffs and that sort of stuff.
There was a song on Adventure 2 that had a funny working title for a long time, uh, referencing Heartwork by
Yeah.
Carcass because that's the only thing I could have thought to compare it to. So the working title for that song for about 3 years was not Heartwork.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. Uh, I guess we have touched a little bit upon that, but we'll see if it is possible to answer this question. Because just to get our listeners a picture of what your band is sounding like, is it possible to compare your sound to like one or two other more famous bands or well-known bands, just to get them a picture of what you guys sound like?
Contemporary bands that are gigging right now that I would compare us to, um, Eternal Champion come to mind. Visigoth also come to mind. Jake from Visigoth has been a blessing. I've had a few conversations with him that have made me keep going with this band.
Awesome.
And the same goes for Jason from Eternal Champion.
Hmm.
He's an incredibly pleasant person to hang out with. And another one, I'll do three.
Yeah.
Contemporary bands still gigging today. Pass.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess too. It's just
I painted
because
myself into a corner there.
yeah, because we're generally not having any of the band's music in our episodes because
Yeah.
of like fair use and all of that sort of stuff. So I just want to ask this question to give the listeners
Hmm.
a way of getting a picture of what you guys sound like. But yeah, and that's something that I really like as well, which you mentioned that the guys from the other bands are awesome. But I really like how all of the bands are really pulling for each other. That is something that I really like in the community.
We try to.
Yeah.
If somebody that we enjoy their music or we enjoy their company as people
Yeah.
or they're label mates with us, if they make a move, if they do something, if they get on a festival or they're doing a tour or they just put out a new single or a new video, if I have the presence of thought to do it, I will always spread the word and let people know, hey, this is
Yeah.
here, this is out there, because I would absolutely want somebody to do the same for me. And also, I just want this music to get legs. I want it to go places. I want
Yeah.
people to live their dreams and get their music heard.
Obviously. And I think that's awesome. But yeah, is there a particular image for Throne of Iron? I'm thinking like we're touching a little bit about stage presence and album art, logos. Is there a particular theme and image that you go for?
This goes back to like the core ethos of the band. My my whole reason for doing this band the way that I do it is one, it's my love of heavy metal.
Hmm.
But two, it's partly because of my experience of getting into heavy metal when I did. and also getting into tabletop role-playing games at the same time
Yeah.
through cassettes and also through dungeon manuals from an older cousin. The two kind of cross-pollinated. And the Midwest United States is kind of the birthplace of modern tabletop role-playing games. The birthplace of Dungeons and Dragons is, you could argue it's Wisconsin, you could argue it's Minnesota.
Hmm.
Uh, but what I try to do with the band's imagery and how we carry ourselves is try to share the general vibe of being into heavy metal in the Midwest in that time, in that place, and share that with the world.
Hmm.
Because we live in a very strange, unique place, and I want to try to to get other people in the mindset that we're in when we're creating this.
Yeah.
So a lot of the imagery that we use is, fantasy art, but it's not like good in air quotes fantasy art that you'd see in a Dungeons and Dragons manual today. It's the stuff where they just like hired a kid out of high school to do them, like in the early D&D manuals, and they literally did that. There's a wonderful documentary called Eye of the Beholder where it's the history of Dungeons and Dragons art, and they talk about how they were literally just hiring kids from high school to come
I think
in
that's
and
fucking
do
awesome.
art at first. And it's great. I think that earnestness that you can get out of amateur art in both visual art and in music is fantastic. I think it makes very
Hmm.
honest, very good art. But I want to bring some of that, you know, and we use lots of wood paneling imagery because that's a very common thing to do in your basement here in the Midwest is
Yeah.
you put up that fake wood paneling. I don't have any
Yeah.
here. If we were in my actual house, I would have some, but and
Yeah.
where I've described it as working class heavy metal before, but we just stick with dungeon crawling heavy metal just because so much of lyrically what we go through is trying to paint these pictures of this is something that's happening in a tabletop gaming campaign.
Yeah. I guess we can go into a little bit of that, the lyrical themes. Do you have
Sure.
like a set theme that you go for, like Sabaton goes for war history or across all of the albums, or does it like differ a little bit between the albums that you guys put out?
Everything is mostly just stories that I've written. Like in my old band, I would steep into historical elements a little bit, but for everything Throne of Iron has done is I just have a story that I want to tell. It's
Hmm.
usually something that either has happened or could have happened in one of the games that we've ran. Uh, and then sometimes I'll pull inspiration from other places. Like I'll the uh, the song Final Rage on the new record is kind of Conan the Barbarian,
Hmm.
but it's tweaked. The song Divine Smite is kind of Doom, kind of
Yeah.
like, uh, but and let's see, we sung The Curse of the Lightning Mancer from a split that we put out a couple of years ago, and that song is vaguely kind of inspired by the Frenzied Flame from Elden Ring.
Yeah.
But for the most part, man, a lot of it really is just adventures and stories that either did happen or could have happened in one of our campaigns. And sometimes, sometimes the lyrics get a little personal, but definitely not frequently. They get personal sometimes, but they're always being filtered through that lens.
Yeah. I think that's kind of cool because that is something that I don't think I've heard that before, to put it like you said through that lens of D&D and stuff.
Mhm. I think that heavy metal and back to the ties between heavy metal and tabletop gaming, I think that both of these mediums are important for storytelling.
Yeah.
I think that both of them tap into a tradition of storytelling that humanity's had since we've had language. And I
Yeah.
think that it's super important to keep that going.
Yeah, it's awesome. Is it like mainly you that write the music, or is it like a collaboration with all of the members in the band?
Songwriting is really interesting for us. We both tend. It's usually myself and the other guitar
Hmm.
player, Corwin Deckard, who write the lion's share of the material. Sometimes there's a few different scenarios and ways that songs will come together. A lot of the times, I or Corwin on our own will just sit down, and then 2 hours later we have a complete song, and then we just
Yeah.
send it to the other guys, and they learn it or put their twist on it or say,
Hmm.
we should change that or we can change that, something like that. We're all very open to feedback with each other. It's I wouldn't call it democratic, but it's very much when somebody brings a fully formed song to the other two, there's always very much like a respect for what
Hmm.
has been done, and but and we're always open to suggestions on things. So one of the ways that songs come together is somebody will just write a complete song, and it'll just very stream of consciousness just happen. The other way that it'll happen is say the song "Holy Fires of Saint Jezza" from the new record. What happened there was Corwin brought the intro riff and the first really fast riff at the beginning of that song, and that was
Yeah.
all he had. He sent those over to me, and then he came over the next day to my house, and then I wrote the whole rest of the song in like 45 minutes or something
Yeah.
like that. Um, Sometimes we can hear something in the other's presentation that they didn't, and
Hmm.
that happens more often than not. Frequently, he and I will like scratch out drums, like program them, and then Jacob, our drummer, he'll either change everything about it or he'll change very little about it. It just depends on how he's feeling about the way the song needs to move and groove.
Yeah.
But for the most part, that's how songs are written. Lyrics are almost always done last, dead last. I will
All
put
right.
off writing lyrics until the cows come home. I'm very slow at writing lyrics. I've gotten better at it in the last year or so, but they are the last thing that I write, because part of it is an anxiety. I'll admit that, because I'm not the most confident in my lyrics, but a good part of it is that I want to make sure that my word choice is correct and where the syllables are going to land and how the meter fits with the guitar riffs and the
Hmm.
drums. Is there a rhyming scheme that I need to be cognizant of? Sometimes I don't care about a rhyming scheme in a song. Sometimes I do. There's not really any rules the way I do it. And on top of that, whenever I'm writing lyrics, the big thing that I always have to think about is, am I going to be able to sing this while I play the guitar riff that's under it?
Yeah.
Because that's always like, if we can't perform it live, then it's a little rough.
Yeah. But because I guess that's part of the fun with being a musician, and that is playing live.
Yes.
So I mean, even though I don't play live much, I'm more of a better musician. But when I do play live, I love it.
I got in a weird headspace when COVID was still very, very heavy in the United States,
Hmm.
where I think we went 2 years without gigging, without playing a show at all. And it kind of messed me up a little bit. Uh, I feel like like now with everything that's going with the Adventure 2 release, that I am starting to finally remember how to book shows in other cities and
Yeah.
in other states and how to interact with people. But for the longest time, I just felt alien. It was very off. And I think I'm finally starting to figure it out. So there was a good period of time there where I would almost say that I was a veteran musician, but I was barely playing or making any music. I was there was a period of time there where I almost quit music.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I didn't now. Now that things are moving again, but it needed a little push.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful that everybody stuck with us, and I'm glad that my bandmates stuck with me as
Yeah,
well.
that's awesome. But yeah, how is it going to be looking in the future for a Throne of Iron? What do we have to expect? You have recently put out a new album, Adventure 2 there.
Yeah,
So
Adventure 2 is out. We're always writing material. If I had to guess between Corwin and I, right now we're both sitting on about 10 more songs. Um,
awesome.
we are just constantly moving. Some that's I'm not sure what our next move is right now. We're just concentrating on getting as much as we can out of Adventure 2. Um, but we've got a fair amount of live dates planned out. We have a few
Mhm.
more in the works for this year. I'm very curious to see if we can potentially get over to your continent,
That
either
would be awesome.
next year potentially. That would be nice. We had a failed excursion there in 2020. That was
Ouch.
spectacular. I can tell that story if you want. I've told it a few times, but it's
Yeah.
just I can laugh about it now. But we have a bunch of material there. We talked with a few other bands about doing splits.
Hmm.
We have an EP concept that we're still fleshing out. That would be like three separate EPs that would be all released within like a few months of one another. So we're playing around with that.
Yeah.
We have some things that we're toying with. Nothing super concrete, but it's all possibilities, and that's
Yeah.
I love the feeling that there's actually potential now.
Yeah. That sounds great. We could talk about your story there about the failed excursion, or
Sure.
would you have we do actually, if you have more stories than that one about live shows and like touring and stuff, would you actually on our podcast we have a concept that we call tour stories, and that is well where we invite the bands back on the show, and all the story is the like episode is all about telling fun and whatever stories from live shows and touring.
Yeah.
So that's
I
something
can
that we could bring you guys back for.
yeah, I can do either or. I can tell you the crappy story about our attempts to go to Europe. Um, and I've got a few stories that are much more fun.
Yeah, maybe this story could be like a teaser for an
Sure.
upcoming tour stories with you guys.
Yeah. Okay. What do you want to hear? Do you want to hear a fun one or do you want to hear a crappy one?
Well, if you want to tell it, tell the story about your failed excursion.
Sure. So our album release show for Adventure One, our first album, was supposed to be at Up the Hammers Festival in Athens, Greece in 2020.
Hmm.
Uh, so we had it all planned out. We had to hustle at the very last minute to get our other guitar players' passports pushed through in time.
All right.
And we had to grind merch sales for a few months to get our plane tickets paid for. So we drive from our little bitty town in Indiana to New York City because it's cheaper to fly out of New York City.
Hmm.
So we fly out of New York City, and about an hour after we take off from JFK International Airport, I connect to the plane's Wi-Fi and my phone starts blowing up with notifications, people trying to get a hold of me in Facebook messages, Instagram DMs, text
Hmm.
messages, all of them saying, "Hey, this COVID thing might actually be serious because Trump says that he's closing the border.
Yeah.
So you might want to get back to America." And I am immediately crestfallen. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I get on the Up the Hammers Facebook event page for the fest, and they've canceled the fest. Like
Hmm.
it's looking pretty dire.
All
So
right.
I put my phone down on the tray table and I sit and I stew on it for about an hour. And I'm thinking like, oh my God, how am I going to break the news to the guys? We've been working towards this for like 8 or 9 months
Yeah.
to get this together. So eventually, the little fasten your seatbelt light turns off. Unfasten mine and go over to the other guys because they're in the center aisle because it's a huge
Yeah.
737 plane. And I say, hey, so Trump's closing the border. Festival's canceled. We're gonna have to turn around on our layover in Switzerland instead of going to Greece. So they all three reacted in different ways.
Yeah.
Jacob, my drummer, was just like, "Oh, that sucks." He puts his headphones back on, goes back to playing Skyrim. Corwin, my other guitar player, he didn't know that a he had like a bout of celiac disease for a little bit there, and he
Right.
ate like a bunch of airport pizza.
Mm-hmm.
So he just went back to throwing up. He was not happy. He hates
Oh
flying
shit.
too. Um, Evan, our bass player at the time, he just lets out this big sigh, and then he reaches into his backpack under his seat, and he pulls out this big Ziploc bag of Bushmills Irish whiskey shooters, and he just starts lining them up on the tray table in front of him and just crushing them. So by the time we land in Zurich, about 9 hours later, Evan is absolutely sweating Irish whiskey, and
Yeah.
so we're having to take turns like guiding him through the airport. Um, so we landed in Zurich,
Mhm.
got off the plane. The plane was about half full on our
All
way
right.
from New York to Zurich. It was about half full. So we go through customs, get stamped into officially air quotes enter the country, go down to baggage claim to prevent our guitars from getting sent to Greece without us. Go back up to the Swiss Airlines terminal. They move our return flight forward like 3 or 4 days. Oh, and then we go back through airport security. And this is the one time I've ever been stopped by airport security because I had to explain to a Swiss security agent what my guitar pedal that I had in my backpack was. Um,
All right.
yeah,
Was it like
and then
an multi-effects unit or something?
yeah,
All right. Right.
and then we get back through customs and we find our gate that our plane is going to be leaving from, and we're like, oh my god, yeah, we made a good time. We can hang out for a little bit and have like some beer and like a soft pretzel or
Mhm.
something. And one of the flight attendants was at the gate. She said, "No, we've been holding the plane for you for 20 minutes. Get on."
Damn.
It's because I read the time wrong. I thought it
Oh,
was like
okay.
one. Because it wasn't in 24-hour clock. Um, it was in 12-hour for some reason. So I got mixed up there. Uh,
Well, that's not
I thought the
confusing
plane
at
was
all.
leaving. I thought the plane would have been leaving at like 13 something. It was leaving at
Hmm.
11 something. So we get back on the plane back to America. We haven't. None of us have slept yet, and we have crossed I don't know how many time zones to do this whole thing just to get back on a plane to go back to America. The flight to Zurich from New York was about halfway full. The flight from Zurich back to New York had 12 people on it, and we were four of them.
Oh shit.
It was one of the most surreal, bizarre experiences of my life. Um, on our way back, well, on our way in, when I found out that the fest was canceled, I didn't know if we were going to have to buy new return flight tickets,
Hmm.
and I didn't want us to get stranded in Europe. So I like put out the call, like, "Hey, this is happening. If you want to help out, buy some merch." We sold so much merch. We sold a
All right.
disgusting amount of merchandise, and we had people donating and stuff. What we ended up doing was when we took a back off from Zurich, we found out that at the time the three Canadian members of Smolder were still stuck in Greece, and they were trying and
Oh.
meet Canada closed their borders immediately. So the only way for them to get back into Canada would be for them to, instead of flying from Greece straight to Canada, they would have to fly from Greece to Britain, stay there for 48 hours, and then fly back to Canada. So all the money that got donated to us, we just rolled that on to Smolder so they could get home.
Oh, that's awesome of you guys.
It was a very, very crazy, bizarre,
Yeah.
unprecedented, not fun time.
Yeah. Well, COVID turned a lot of things upside down.
Yeah, we're still
Like,
feeling it.
yeah, the pretty much all of entertainment was just shut down.
I was did that shut down in Sweden too? Like how I don't know how hard Sweden locked down when all that went
Uh,
down.
it was pretty much a hard shutdown, but
Mhm.
possibly a little bit too late.
Yeah,
because well, Sweden is not a very large country. We have like 10 million citizens in Sweden, and I think it was somewhere in between 15,000 and 20,000 deaths from this
good
virus.
lord.
So that's quite a lot.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And I think it was actually from Greece and some others southern European countries that it spread into Sweden. So it wasn't directly from Asia.
It's the trade-off of
Yeah,
having a big interconnected global society like we have. It's just part of
yeah,
it.
I guess it is very vulnerable in that way.
Yeah,
But hey, we're at the back end of it right now, so
hmm
hopefully we don't
absolutely.
get a new slap in the face with a new virus.
God, I hope not. I was making the joke before we released Adventure 2
Yeah.
that it feels like every time a band that I'm in releases a full-length album,
Hmm.
something awful happens. Like I feel I was starting to feel cursed.
Yeah.
Um, so my first ever band's first album, we released that and then the drummer quit. The
Oh.
second album was supposed to release a year earlier than it did because of art delays, because the
Hmm.
artist was going through a divorce. The first Throne of Iron album releases, the world shuts down because of a global
Yeah,
pandemic.
right. Because
And
Adventure One was released back in 2020, right?
yeah, April, it was released in March of 2020.
Yeah, right.
And it was very upsetting. So this whole time I've been sitting here being like, what horrible thing is going to happen when we release Adventure
Well,
2?
we're we're gonna have to hope that we can get some goodness out of this album.
I'm hoping. I'm
Yeah,
hoping. I'm pushing as hard as I can.
we're gonna absolutely hope for the best.
Yeah.
But hey, that was pretty much everything that I had for you. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about or shout out or anything like that before we get
I I have a
everybody or
few
the
bands.
listeners?
I have a few bands that I would like to shout out.
Huh?
I run a recording studio out of my home as well.
Awesome.
Here soon, I'm going to be recording drums for the new Mason Chain record. They're based out of Sweden, but their drummer lives in
All
Nashville,
right.
Tennessee. So
Cool.
I'm going to be they're recording the drums for the new Mason Chain record. That's going to come out on No Remorse Records. I am in the middle of mixing the new Tales from the Ezra Brooks cycle record, which is also coming out on No Remorse Records. I just finished up a full length for a blackened thrash deathy metal band from
Mhm.
Indianapolis called Vile Iniquity. That is a fantastic record. Expect me to spam that everywhere whenever it comes out because I'm
Yeah.
very happy with that record. There is a super dense, heavy sludge record that I am mixing now from a band called Omen Killer.
Cool.
That is all. They're also worth checking out. Uh, Bands that I'm not working with that I would love to shout out. Chamber Mage. Chamber Mage just
Oof,
released a
Shaver
new
Mage
record.
are awesome.
It is an incredible album. Serpent Rider just released a new record that is
Mhm.
also very good. Lady Beast just released a new record that is fantastic. Our label mates and friends by Fire and Sword are working on a new record right now as well.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm gonna feel so bad if I forget anyone. That's all I have.
Yeah.
I don't want to hold you up too long, but that's a lot. Yeah. So
Chamber
I'm
Mage
I'm
are
doing
awesome. If I
yeah.
don't recall wrong, we have actually. I don't remember if we have worked with them or if we have contacted them. Uh,
We played. We didn't play the same day as them, but we played Stormbringer Festival with them a couple of years ago
yeah.
in Massachusetts, and we also played Legions of Metal with them in Chicago.
Awesome.
They're lovely young men. I enjoy their company a lot, and they write very good music.
Now I know why I recognize Chamber Mage. That is actually the guys I'm gonna record with this upcoming Friday.
There you go.
Yeah. So that's why I recognize them so bad. So
Yeah,
that's gonna be awesome.
yeah. Their new record is incredible.
Yeah,
I was very, very pleased with it.
for sure.
That's all I got.
But yeah, uh, with that said, I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, of course.
I'm absolutely down to come back on and talk about some of the wild and wacky things that have happened in the Throne of Iron world.
Yeah, well, I would love to hear that. And
Sure.
if you have a specific date that you would like to mash it into together with a release or something, we can absolutely make that happen.
All right.
So let us know if there is any particular date in that
Yeah.
aspect.
Yeah. If you want to do what you did last time and send me the spreadsheet of
Yeah.
your time slots, that works
Yeah,
awesome for me.
Of course.
So, if it sounds like you might like this band, do not hesitate to go and check them out. If it is not what you usually listen to, go and give them a chance anyway. You might find something new that you will enjoy. I find new bands and kinds of music all the time when we do this podcast. Most importantly, if you do like this band, make sure that you support them in ways that works for you. Easiest ways to support them is to follow them on their social media. It is very easy and it is completely free. Of course, I would like to encourage you as well to buy their music. If you like what we are doing here on Metal Verbalizers podcast, bringing you new metal to enjoy, don't forget to follow us on our social medias as well. This way you will get updates on what bands we are going to verbalize next. Maybe you have a band in mind that you would like us to feature. Do not hesitate to tell us about them. We always take suggestions in consideration when we plan our episodes. Did I mention our YouTube channel? There we also have a video version of tour stories and all episodes in season 4. You do not want to miss this. Thank you for listening. You've been listening to Metal Verbalizers podcast, Verbalizing Throne of Iron.